Thanks for joining us. This is our Tops to Roots Zero Waste Cooking class. I'm Stephanie Jordan. I am the Local Food Program Manager at Sustainable Solano, and this is one of many classes that we are doing, both virtually and hopefully live someday, to raise awareness of specialty crops that are grown by our local farmers here in Solano County. And specialty crops are those things that we eat primarily. It's vegetables and fruit and tree nuts and culinary herbs. There's also some flowers and nursery products put in there, but we are focusing on the edibles in that group. And you can find a lot more about this and our other food-focused initiatives on our website, which is sustainablesolano.org. So today I'm going to be talking about 4 different vegetables where we can utilize most all of the plant, but I'm going to be doing recipes for 2 of them. And I know when we posted the description a couple days ago, I put in a radish recipe, which we're going to do today, and then there was a wild card recipe. And so our wild card recipe is Carrot-Top Pesto. And so I know that we have these recipes now up on our website, and you're welcome to check them out. You can also download them and print them out as a PDF. So they are there in the local food section of sustainablesolano.org. Allison, do you have those recipes to show? We can just do a quick show and tell of the recipes. I don't know, she's trying to manage 2 different things here, the Zoom class and the Facebook Live. So, all right, so here's the pan-roasted radishes with radish greens. Very simple recipe. We're just going to kind of talk through how to deal with all of the parts of that. And then the other one is the Carrot-Top Pesto. The actual recipe is roasted carrots with Carrot-Top Pesto. But today I'm just going to focus on the pesto part. I'm not going to roast the carrots. But maybe I'll do that for dinner later tonight or something. So here's the roasted carrots with Carrot-Top Pesto. So there's instructions for roasting the carrots as well as making the pesto. Today I'm just going to do the actual pesto. Okay, thank you, Allison. And then the other 2 vegetables that we're going to talk about are fennel and beets. And I'll address those kind of at the end once we've gone through these 2 recipes here. So first, I'm going to do what's called the mise en place for the pesto, and then I'm going to start the radish recipe. And then while the radishes are hanging out in the oven for a little bit, we'll finish up our pesto in the food processor, and then I'll return to the radishes and finish those over here on this induction burner. All right, so let's look at the Carrot-Top Pesto. This has a lot of ingredients as just a normal basil pesto. In fact, it does have basil in it, but there are definitely some areas where you can play with this and kind of make it your own. So first we have some garlic cloves, which is very typical for pesto. So here's my just regular old garlic cloves. I'm going to move this over so you guys can see. A little bit easier. So to get the garlic skins off, I'm going to give that a little whack with my knife, and then I'm going to cut the end that would go kind of down toward the root, and then the skin should just pop right off. So that way you're not trying to stand there and peel. So that's how I'm going to deal with my 2 cloves. I'll get the other one. I have a kind of a medium-sized one and then just a little tiny one here, which I'm going to throw in. And if you are a garlic lover and want this to be garlicky, by all means, add larger cloves, add an additional one, whatever you want to do. All right, so there's the garlic. And then next we have macadamia nuts or pine nuts. I happen to have some macadamia nuts, so we're going to use those today. I have these in my freezer, which is a great way to store your nuts. That way they keep really for like months and months on end. So they're kind of these big round nuts, and I'm going to chop these a little bit so that I can actually see the quantity better. So to do that, what you can do is you could put them in the food processor or a little, smaller grinder of some sort, or you can just take a meat mallet. I have them in a little Ziploc bag here, and I'm just going to give them a whack. I'll just use my scraper, get the knife off there. So the reason I'm doing this is because, I want to have the measurement, I want it to be about 2 or 3, 3 to 4 tablespoons of crushed macadamia nuts, because these are so big. I would fit maybe 2 of these in a, tablespoon, and it'd be really hard to tell exactly how much I really have. So that's why I'm doing this little pre-crush routine here. There we go, that's good enough. I just want to break it down enough so that I can actually measure it. So I have some extra ones in here, which I did earlier. So I'm just going to add all this together. Okay, so there's my crushed macadamias ready to go. Okay, next in line, back over there, we have the carrot tops. So, you know, these are normally attached to the actual carrot. There's a little bit of a stalky part, and then there's kind of this leafy part at the top. So if your carrots are small, like the little baby ones that you can find in bunches at the farmer's market or at the store, your little stalk parts are going to be a little more tender and flexible. And in which case, I would say throw them in. If they seem to be tough, typically as the carrots grow bigger, so does this stalk part. You may not want to include that just because it's going to be a little bit fibrous and tough. So these feel fairly flexible, but I have quite a pile here of the leafy part from the top. So I'm just going to trim off kind of the bottom half or so of the stalk, and then I'm going to use the rest up here. And I'm just going to give these a quick little chop because I will need to measure this into a measuring cup in a little while. Okay, so there's my carrot tops. A note about when you get the carrots themselves, you want to separate the tops from the roots as quickly as possible, because what happens is, you know, this is still the entire plant that we're working with. And the leaves will start to, the leaves would continue to draw moisture out of the roots as it's sitting like in your fridge or wherever. So you want to get the tops off of the carrots as soon as you get them home from the market. And then I personally like to store carrots in cold water. So I will fill up a container. In fact, I probably have it in my fridge right now. My children devour carrots. So what I do is I just cut them into, you know, strips and little carrot sticks and put them in a container with a bunch of water. So these are soaking. They're like in a little swimming pool here of water. And then put the lid on and stick it in the fridge, and they will stay super juicy and crispy for whenever you're ready to use them. So that's my recommendation on storing the carrots. Okay, so back to our pesto. We are using basil leaves. So I have some basil leaves here ready to go. And what I did with both the basil and the carrot tops is, my favorite tool, the salad spinner. So in here I have some extra basil because I think I'm going to need it. So after I took off the tops, I sloshed them around in the big bowl of water like you've heard me talk about so many times. And then I just ran them through the salad spinner so that they're dry. Because when you're making a pesto, you really want your leafy green parts to be as dry as possible. We don't want to have it watered down from any extra water. We want the olive oil and all the aromatics involved in this, like the garlic, to really come through and shine. So here's my last round of basil. Give that a spin. And this over here while it's spinning. Okay. And then last but not least, our next major thing is some Parmesan. So I'm going to use this microplane. This is great for doing citrus zest, and it's also great for cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and just grate a bunch of this. I think I need like around 1/3 of a cup. You know, again, if you want your pesto to be more cheesy, then by all means, add a little extra. These are very kind of rough amounts and guidelines. You know, pestos are very forgiving. You can tweak them many ways and add more of a favorite flavor if that's what you want to do. So there's that. And just for fun, I'll pack it into my little measuring cup here. Okay. All right, so there's that. Set that there. Please. Okay. So this little procedure that I'm doing here, all this pre-measuring and stuff, is called mise en place, and it means to put into place. And so this way, when I'm ready to cook, I don't have to worry about trying to chop something while something else over here might be burning and trying to, you know, multitask. So it cuts down on kind of the, you know, scatterbrainness that can happen in a kitchen. Okay, so I have basically everything ready to go. I've got my olive oil over here ready to go to, and we want to put the pesto together. Let's see. So let me just grab I'm just going to grab a handful of basil and add it to the rest of this so that it's ready to measure. Okay, get this out of the way. All right, so now over to our radishes. We're going to start the radishes. This is this particular recipe is for pan roasted, which means we're going to start it on the stove top, or in this case, an induction burner. And then I'm going to move this pan into the oven, and it's going to cook a little while in the oven, and then it's going to come back to the burner, and we're going to finish it up on top here. So let's look at our radish ingredients. Relocate this over to here. All right, so here's my radish. Some of these radishes are from Eat Well Farm. I guess they're CSA, and then a few are also from the store because I needed to get some extra. So, you know, they come like this. Here they are. And there's always a bunch in the bunch of radishes. But individually, they've got some little leaves on top. And I have some really pretty ones today. I have some purple ones and some white ones and some red ones. So all I did is I twisted off the greens. And I'm going to add the greens over here to my big pile. Pile of green right here. And then I went through the radishes themselves, the roots, and I just kind of trimmed off the tops, which is where the green would meet the actual root. And if you want to trim the tails, you can. It's up to you. Sometimes it's fun to leave those on just for presentation. And then I'm just cutting them in half. These tended to be a little bit larger. Sometimes you can get really tiny ones. There were a couple small ones in here that I left whole, but everything else I decided just to cut in half. You want this to be as uniform in size as possible, because then everything will cook evenly, and then you don't have some that are, you know, underdone and some that are overdone. So I have my bowl of radishes right here ready to go. And then this is also a very simple recipe. So my greens are here, and I treated the greens on the radishes the same way I treated the greens on the carrots. I put them into my big bowl of water, sloshed them around. The sediment and any sand and dirt sunk to the bottom, and I skimmed them off and ran these through my salad spinner. And this is pretty much like the whole leafy part. I mean, if there's a part on the bottom here and on the stalk that feels tough, or if you have any leaves that just kind of look, you know, like they're starting to really get wilted and kind of, you know, slimy or something, or if they're starting to get really yellow, you can pull those off. Typically on your radish, you know, some leaves will be older, so those you can pull off, and then you want to keep the ones that are nice, you know, green, fresh looking. Okay, so that is that. And then I think we are ready to turn this thing on. All right, and so meanwhile, my oven is on back there behind me. It's at about 425, I think, oh, maybe 400-ish. Actually, I'm going to turn it up. Yeah, okay, it's at about 425. So I'm going to start my pan here, and I'm going to crank this up until it's pretty hot. We want this to be on basically high, or the equivalent of high, on your stove top. Okay. So for these radishes, we are going to start with some olive oil, a couple tablespoons of oil, and here's my salt and pepper. So again, we're going to start by sauteing. I'm going to kind of shake them around, and I want a little bit of brown spots to start to form on the radishes while they're in the pan. Put a little oil in here. This is from Soul Food Farm up in Pleasance Valley. You guys have seen this before. I use it quite a bit in my cooking. I'm going to grab another tool, which is kind of handy for this sort of cooking, which is this thing. This is a splatter screen. So this is great for when you're sauteing things on high, and it kind of just keeps all that oil from flying around and getting on you or in your face. So this is going to beep at me every time I pull the pan off to see how hot it is. It's going to beep. Okay. So this is it's warming up. What I'm waiting for is to see that the oil starts to run like water. When it starts to move really fast across the pan, when I do this, then I know that it's getting hot. I'm going to add just a little tad more in there. Looks like I need just a hair extra. All right, let's see if we're, yep, little sizzle there. All right, I'm going to throw these in. Okay. And this is probably going to get a little bit loud. All right. Okay, I'm just going to move them around and get the oil on the radishes. Okay, so this is a saute pan as opposed to a braising pan. So the saute pans have kind of a slope up the side as opposed to like straight sides all around. Saute in French means to jump. So this is the kind of pan where you can, you know, do this routine with to mix things up if you want, or if you don't want to deal with your tongs or whatever. Okay, I'm going to add some salt. I'm not really measuring. I'm just kind of sprinkle on a generous amount so that everything's covered. I'm going to put on my pepper. Okay. All right. And I'm going to let that sit. So while we're waiting for this to kind of do its thing for a few minutes, let me talk a little bit about where the radishes kind of come from and some of their nutritional value. So the radishes are part of the brassica family, which means they are related to the broccoli, the cauliflower, the kale, and the mustard greens, and turnips, and that sort of stuff. So they're very high in vitamin C, and because they are a cruciferous vegetable, you know, they have some kind of cancer-fighting antioxidant compounds in them. They also have a pretty good amount of fiber, especially in the leaves, which will help with digestion. And they also, interestingly, have some antifungal properties to them. Now, a little disclaimer, you know, this is just kind of general nutritional information and not intended to replace any advice or information from your doctor or a nutritionist, but just I always want to share a little bit of background about what's in these vegetables and why it can be, why they're healthy, what's good about them. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna give these a little mix, see how they're doing. So I am not a fan of raw radishes. I've never been a huge fan of them. And so it wasn't until one time, one of my culinary school friends was visiting me in California, his name's Brian, and he kind of stood there and said, I'm not fond of radishes. And I said, yeah, well, neither am I. In his kind of South African British accent, and we kind of stood there looking at him thinking, well, what are we going to do with these things? And he said, well, I have an idea. And so he got out one of my pans and threw some butter in the pan and started cooking them. And what will happen is that horseradishy bite that you get from a raw radish disappears when you cook them. And so they definitely will get a lot more mellow, and I don't want to say sweet, but you know, with the right kind of radish, I mean, it's, you know, plus you have the caramelization from the cooking process that we're doing. It completely changes the flavor of the radishes. So I enjoy them much more when they're cooked than raw, but I will still eat them raw, like, you know, on a taco or something, in a salad. So, all right. So let's see what's going on here. A little loud. I hope you guys can hear me here. I'm trying to kind of talk as loud as I can. I'm waiting for a little bit more browning to happen, and then I'm going to throw these into the oven. Okay. A couple other ingredients that we are going to add to the radishes at the end. I have a couple tablespoons of butter right here, and then I'm also going to use some lemon juice. So I'll go ahead and get that ready. Oh, here it is. Okay. I just need a couple tablespoons. I'm going to go ahead and measure out 2 tablespoons, and I'll kind of decide when it's done if I'm going to use all of it. We'll kind of put a little bit in and taste a little bit and then go from there. All right, I'm going to keep that just in case I want more. Okay, so this stuff, that is ready to go. So when we come back to our radishes, I'm going to stash this over here. All right, I think we're about ready to go into the oven. Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of browning on some of the cut edges that are hitting the pan. Okay, so that looks good. So I'm going to put that over there. I'm going to turn this off, and in we go. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit in there for about 10-15 minutes. We're going to make our pesto, and then we'll come back to the radishes and finish those up. All right, I'm going to shove this over. Okay. Time to maneuver some. Oh, that was my. Okay, I'm still here. Good. Just a little crash. No biggie. All right, on to the Carrot-Top Pesto. So this is just, basic food processor. Put these things back over here. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the garlic, and I'm going to do that with the machine running because it'll chop it up really efficiently. And if you want to chop up garlic for some other use, that's like the best way to do it. I mean, if you're short on time, you want to turn it on, drop it in while it's running, and it'll just do the job. Okay, so there's my garlic, and now I'm going to add the nuts as well. So 3 to 4 tablespoons of the macadamia nuts. These are the crushed up ones. Oops. I like macadamias, so I'm going to go with 4. And we can always add a little extra at the end after we taste it. So I'm going to make this into a little bit of a paste first. Especially because I had these macadamia nuts in the freezer, so they're a little bit hard. So I want to kind of get them. Yeah, that looks good. It's like looks like breadcrumbs now at this point in the food processor. Okay. All right. So then we're going to add the basil, the carrot tops, and the Parmesan. So we need about 2 cups of carrot tops. And these are just going to be loosely packed into my measuring cup. Okay, so there is my first one. I'm just kind of gently patting it down. So there's number 1. I lost a couple here. All right, there's cup number 2. Okay, and then we need about 1/2 cup of the basil leaves. For the basil, I'm going to pack it in. So I'm going to really push down firmly until I can't really get any more in there, and what I'm pushing is like kind of level with the top of my measuring cup. So that's what I mean by packed. Okay, so that's that. Now, if this starts to get too full, you can definitely give it a couple of pulses just to kind of break it down. If you decide to double this recipe or, change your quantities a little bit, stem there. You can do this and then it'll create more space to add more. So, okay, then we have our Parmesan going in. I'm going to give that another little chop. Okay, now the olive oil. So I need about 1/2 cup. And for something where you're not cooking this, I recommend, investing in good quality olive oil. It's like if you're making a vinaigrette or, in this case, a pesto, any kind of like procedure where maybe you're doing like a finishing oil on something, definitely go for the good quality oil. The less expensive oil, I think that would be great for like cooking and, kind of like we were sauteing or grilling, because you're going to lose a lot of that flavor anyway when you start to cook and grill. Plus, if you have like marinades and stuff, you're just going to, that kind of takes over the flavor anyway too. So, but for this, definitely go for the good olive oil. All right, and I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to pour this in while it's going. Okay. Next, I'm going to add some salt and pepper. Just kind of eyeballing this. And then it looks like I might need a little bit more oil. just given the consistency. I'm gonna do a little scrape down here on the sides. See what's going on here. It's looking pretty good. Let me make sure all the oil's in there. Okay, I'm gonna add just like maybe another tablespoon of oil. It looks like it needs to be loosened up just a tad. And I think everything's in there. Garlic, nuts, carrot tops, basil, Parmesan, olive oil, salt, pepper. Yep, okay, so this is done. Super easy peasy once you get everything kind of prepped and ready to roll. Let me give it one more spin and then I'm gonna taste it. Okay, grab little tasting spoon things up there. And you know, this might taste kind of strong on its own, which is fine. You want it to be pretty intense because you're going to add this to other things. You know, when you add it to the roasted carrots, you know, the carrots are going to kind of water down that flavor. All right, that's good. So it tastes, I taste the basil, and I also taste a little bit of that carrot flavor. So you could serve this with potatoes, you could throw this on eggs, you could put it with fish, especially like a white fish. I would even put this with other grilled vegetables like zucchini and yellow squash that have been grilled. You know, I love pesto on just about anything. So just, you know, it's a really good use for those carrot tops, and or if you don't have enough basil or happen to have all these ingredients on hand. Okay. All right, so that's that. Set this whole thing aside. So I can get one thing out of the way here. Okay, meanwhile, I'm going to just go back over there to the oven and check the radishes and see what they're doing. Okay, and remember, this is a super hot handle. Okay, those were not quite done yet. They felt, even when I was stirring them around in the pan, they still felt like they were a little hard. I'm going to give them like 5 or 6 more minutes and we'll check them again. What I want them to be is I want to be able to like move a paring knife like this in. It doesn't have to slide in like butter, but it needs to be kind of like crisp tender. So I want it to be able to go in fairly easily. And those seem to, plus they didn't have quite as much browning yet. So I'm going to leave them in there for a little bit longer and then I'll show you what they look like at the end. Okay. All right. So while we're waiting for that, let's talk about our 2 other vegetables that I was mentioning earlier. I think we're done with, let's see, yeah, done with this too. Swapping out all my ingredients here. All right. So we were talking about beets. Here are some yellow beets. I got these from Terra Firma. If anybody is a CSA member, they were selling these by the case, actually. They have golden ones and red ones. And so my favorite way to use the bottom root part is roasting. And I'm just going to kind of walk you through how I do the roasting of the beets. So I'm going to take like a little, you kind of want to make like a square of foil. And again, I need to take the tops off. So I'm going to cut that off so that I have just the bottom part. And there's always a little bit of dirt stuck in this section. So I'm going to trim about 1 inch or so off of this. We'll get rid of that part. And then I'm left with the green leafy top part here. So I'm just going to set those over here on a towel for a minute. Okay, I'm going to trim the other one. And when I'm trimming, you can see I'm taking off, like pretty much, I'm shaving off some of the skin on the top so that I get all of that top part off. And then again, it's up to you. If you want to leave the tail on, you can. If you want to trim that off, you can. I'm going to just trim these because it's a little bit easier to manage on the roasting, but for presentation, sometimes it's really fun just to leave that on. All right, so I've got greens here, and then I'm going to wrap these up in the foil. So I'm going to put my beet down in the middle of the foil, and I'm just going to make like a little, I'm going to totally enclose it, make a little pocket thing, so like that. Okay. So what will happen is, you know, these were washed, so the water in the beet will kind of start to come out when it hits the heat, and then it'll steam. So these are going to cook kind of by steaming, but they also do roast a little bit. So you might find that there's some caramelization on the bottom of the foil. Sometimes what I do is after they've been in for a little while, I'll kind of shake them around so that they roll over, and then they get a little more caramelization on the other side. And then once, so these will also go into a pretty hot oven, 425-ish, I would say. It will take a while. The larger the beet, the longer the cooking time. So if they are really big, you could cut them in half and then wrap them in foil like this. And then once they're done, and you know, again, you'll want to judge doneness by being able to pierce a little paring knife through the beet. If you can slide it through fairly easily, then you're good. So let's pretend this is now roasted and it's done. I'm going to take it out, and then the skin will just kind of peel right off. And you will get your hands kind of stained. So if you have some gloves, especially with the red beets, you might want to put those on. But the skin will just kind of rub right off. And then you're ready to cut it. You can put it on a salad. You can, you know, eat it however you want. So you can add vinaigrette to it, some herbs, etc. So that's how I deal with the bottom parts of the beet. As for the tops, these, I would just pretend and treat these like any other leafy green, like chard or, you know, spinach, kale, etc. That was a little yellow. So I have a bunch of chard in my fridge. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop these up, and I'm just going to saute it with the chard. And, you know, I might have a little concoction of greens. I kind of like to do this and just have it available in my fridge, because once you have a bunch of sauteed greens, you know, you've got a pasta topping now, or you've got something to mix in with, you know, some rice or something to throw on some pizza. So I will, I think, saute this with a bunch of garlic, maybe some red pepper flakes, in some olive oil. And, you know, if I want to do like beans and greens, I could always add some cannellini beans to the greenery mixture that gets sauteed. What typically I would do with these is I would braise it. So let me grab another pan. Let's think about this earlier. Sorry, I'm running around all over my kitchen today. So what I would do is I would start by sauteing. So, you know, I have bits and pieces here, put them in the pan with the olive oil, and then braising means you're going to add some liquid. So then I would add maybe some, you know, veggie stock or some water or whatever, and then I'm going to put a lid on, and then it's going to finish cooking kind of by steaming, because it's, again, you've got that liquid in there. It's going to get really hot, and it's going to kind of finish it off. The reason I like to braise, for one thing, it's going to help all of these greens cook more evenly and thoroughly, because you've got stems, which can be a little tough, and then you've got the leafy part, which is going to cook a little faster. But I don't think there's that big of a difference between the stem and the leaf, where you have to like try to cut the stems off and cook the stems first and then put the leaves in later. Beets, you know, they're pretty thin, so they'll cook through just fine. So you can just put them all into the pan, you know, chopped up, and let it do its thing. If you are combining like chard and beet greens, I would put those two things in first at the same time, and then if you're adding spinach, you want to throw that in at the very end. Spinach needs literally like 30 seconds to wilt, and then it's done. So that's kind of your progression of, you know, what to do with it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you know, you can add whatever else you want. Some beans, some different aromatics. You can throw in some onions. You know, I like the garlic and the greens together. So just some ideas on what to do there. Okay, I'm going to check the radishes one more time, see how they're doing. Hopefully they're ready to come back over here. Okay, I'm going to stab it with my knife here, see where we're at. Okay, perfect. Okay, so they're looking a little bit shrivelly. They're still holding their color, which is really nice. I'm going to turn this back on, and this is a super hot handle, so I'm going to put my mitt around it like this so that I don't forget what's going on here. You can have nasty, nasty burns. Okay, so again, I'm turning this back up onto high because I want to kind of get everything in the pan really fast and let it go. So the olive oil is in there. Next is the butter. All right, there it goes. And then we're going to put in our greens. It looks like a lot of greens, but they're going to wilt down. Actually, we may not need all these. This is quite a few. All right, let me get my tongs out here. The radish greens do kind of act like the spinach, where they just kind of wilt down and it almost looks like there's nothing left. So we're kind of doing a quick little lemon butter sauce almost for this. Okay, I have a little bit more room in the pan now that I've mixed them around. I think I can add the rest of this now. So I'm just trying to move this. I'm sort of flipping it over to get the uncooked greens down to the bottom. And I'm trying to put my cooked radishes kind of on top here so that the greens are surrounded by everything that's hot and they will cook. All right. So then the last step on this is adding lemon juice. And as we've discussed in other classes, acid turns nice bright green things an ugly pea green after about 20 or 30 minutes in this case. So if you're doing this, you know, as a side dish, you want to add your lemon juice right at the end. Okay, so we're wilted now. As you can see, this is what it's looking like. I don't have any big beefy things anymore. It's kind of like stalks with some wilted leaves. Radishes are good. I'm going to add my lemon juice, give it a little stir, and I'm going to add a little more salt and pepper. And it kind of makes this nice little, like a little reddish pink sauce there from the radish skins. I added salt and pepper on the radishes, but now I've added greens and I've added more things to the pan, so I want to add a little more seasoning. Okay, and that is done. If it's really hot outside and you don't want to turn your oven on, you can definitely do this whole thing just on the stove top. You just want to cut your radishes. Well, it's up to you really. The radishes might take a little longer to cook, but you can definitely just do the whole sauteing process up here. You don't have to put it in the oven if you don't want to, and then just finish it with your greens. I'm going to put these on a plate and bring it over and show you. And then we will talk about our last veggie. Let's get some of these pretty purple ones here. White ones. Okay. Trying to find some interesting looking ones here. Okay, so that's what it should look like when we're all done. It's very hot, got lots of steam there. So, and then the radishes, again, are fairly tender. See if my head is chopped off. No, not too bad. Okay. All right, so that's the radishes. And then last but not least, I'm going to quickly talk about fennel. So this is the one vegetable today where we're not really dealing with the roots. This is the part that grows above the ground. So if you see these outside, you know, this is the actual plant, and then we have all these leafy fronds is what they're called. So you can use the bottom part, the bulb, and the stalks in many ways. I like to cut all of this apart and roast it in the oven. So here's my bottom part, and I'm going to just set those there for right now. So the bulb part, I typically cut off the bottom bit, and then I'm going to cut it lengthwise. And then there's usually a core inside here that you want to cut out. It's usually kind of a triangular shaped thing. Okay. And once those are out, then I just like to, you know, cut it crosswise. You can use these little shavings on a salad. It's really good with oranges or even with the beets that we are going to roast and put on a salad. So I like fennel with, yeah, you could do like a fennel with oranges and walnuts and maybe throw, you know, on top of some mixed greens. We could do the fennel with the beets and do a little vinaigrette for those things and put that on greens, or just serve them as is with those two things together. I also really like roasted fennel. It does taste a little bit licoricey, but once you roast it, it starts to sweeten. So, you know, same deal. I could just keep on cutting this into strips and toss all of this with some olive oil and put it on a sheet pan and throw it in the oven. Again, probably around 375 or 400 degrees. It will take a little while because these are pretty hard, but what will happen is it'll start to get a little bit caramelized on the outside. It'll get more limp and it'll get sweeter, which is really yummy. So that's kind of my favorite ways to use the fennel. You know, I think we used it in a soup the other day too or something. So, you know, it's pretty versatile, but it does have kind of that little licoricey flavor. And then in terms of the fronds, I would treat this like any kind of herb that you might pick. So we could pull these off and use them as a garnish on a salad. You could put them in the salad itself. You could also add these to vinaigrettes or marinades. What else can we do with these things? Let's see. Oh, you could add it to like a pickling solution. We made some pickled vegetables the other day, and so you could add those in just to add extra flavor as well. So I would just treat these like an herb. In terms of storing, the fennel will keep fine in a plastic bag. You know, if it's excessively wet, you want to kind of dry it off, but if it's a little bit damp, that's okay. And it should keep, for sure, if you get it from a farm or something, it should keep at least a week. It's a pretty hardy vegetable. The first thing that will start to go are the fronds, and if you see that, you can just kind of trim it off. I had to give this one a haircut because the fronds were like up to here. But you know, once you take those off, then the rest of it should still hold fine. Let's see. I want to back up a little bit on the beets. In terms of storing the beets, you know, again, if you get them from a farmer's market or a store with the tops on, you want to take the tops off and store them separately, because it's the same story as the carrots. It's going to start to pull the moisture out of the actual root, and you want to keep that as moist as possible so that it's juicy and flavorful when it comes time to cook it. But otherwise, you know, they will also keep fine in a bag. You know, it's a little bit tricky because the roots like water, but the leaves don't like water. So once you separate them, I would keep the leaves as dry as you can, because once these get into contact with water and moisture, they start to get limp and they start to kind of break down. But the root parts, like the carrots on the bottom and the beets on the bottom, you know, those can handle being in some moisture for a little while.